Hello, my name is Caeden,
And I'm Morgan.
and we'll be bringing you a grim story of the deadliest war. We start off at the end of the 4 Years' War, with the reparations Germany had to suffer. Their country was going downhill, and fast. With the $33 billion that they had to pay back, their economy was down the drain. They were printing so much money, and their currency, which was the mark at the time, became worthless. They had such bad inflation because money kept getting printed off. They also had to demilitarize the Rhineland and have a significantly smaller army. Their army couldn't exceed about 100,000 men. The German people were not happy about all the suffering they had to go through. Then, this World War I corporal from the German army, named Adolf, decided he had enough of it. He started rioting. He inevitably got prison time for it, but he wrote a book about his whole plan to overthrow the German government, called Mein Kampf. Everyone loved it, even the people in the German government. He got let out early for good behavior. He only did 9 months of his 5-year sentence. That's crazy. He started rioting again, but this time, he had people who believed in his idea of fixing Germany. He ran for president, but lost. But the person who did win, Paul Hindenburg, appointed him Chancellor of Germany. He did it unwillingly, though. He then got power hungry and took over the German government with his ideas. He broke almost every reparations and agreements that the Treaty of Versailles, which made France mad. He then declared war against France. Germany overtook the Rhineland from France quickly with their new military tactic. This tactic was called Blitzkrieg. It was a strategy of attacking swiftly and suddenly, which gives the enemy little to no time to be prepared. At this time in the United States, we had just started to recover from the Great Depression. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, aka President Roosevelt or FDR, was still in office, telling everyone that there was a war going on overseas. He tried to stay neutral as best as we could, but unlike President Wilson, FDR encouraged people's free thought of the war. Then Britain declared war on Germany, but Germany wasn't suffering anymore. They were winning battles. Then, the Japanese launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base, Pearl Harbor. It was tragedy for us all. So many Americans died for no purpose. We weren't fighting anyone. We did know that the Japanese were planning an attack on a U.S. naval base, but we didn't know which. This was war. We declared war on Japan the next day. About 3 days later, Germany saw its advantage and declared war on the U.S. President Roosevelt was glad about it. I mean, he was mad because they're declaring war on the U.S., but he was worried that the American people would be against it if he declared war against Germany.
Then they started drafting. The majority of the men went overseas, and the women and children stayed in their homes. That was the beginning of a big movement in American history. Most of the women decided to get jobs in the factory or become nurses. Then the war turned around for Germany. They were in the lead until America decided to join the war. They started failing and they realized it. They fought hard at the end and they didn't have enough manpower, and eventually overpowered. Their leader had died, and then they surrendered. But Japan had another idea. Japan had this big thing for pride, and they refused to surrender. They would rather die a warrior's death than to surrender or become a POW, standing for prisoners of war, which made them great fighters. But then the atomic bomb was invented. which was a major turning point of the war. Japan still didn't surrender when America told them that they would use the bomb on them, and they did. Japan still didn't surrender when America used the bomb on Hiroshima. America bombed Japan twice. Japan finally surrendered after the second time. The leader, Hirohito, wrote the documents for their surrender. He was ridiculed for it, but he had made a wise decision. He saw how many casualties the bomb was causing. He preferred to still have the people in his country than for it to be wiped from existence. That was officially the end of the war. The majority of things were okay for a couple of years, then tension rose again. This time it was between the Allies and much more. But this war was much colder.